yeah, we're going to talk quite a lot about it because it'll be interesting. Now, Deuteronomy is a book written by Moses that was a reiteration of the law. In other words, he's repeating it to them right before they go to take the promised land. So that was the point of Deuteronomy. I'm going to tell you what you got to do to go and take the promised land and how to stay there. If you don't do it, you're not going to be there very long at all. And, of course, we know what happens to the Israelites, right? Eventually, they don't follow the law and the rules that God gave them. And what happened to them? Did they lose their land? For how many years? Thousands and thousands of years. And just really got it back in 1947, 48. So, yeah, so it's kind of crazy. And so the last two chapters, God was telling them about false leaders. He was saying, if you have a false leader that tells you that it's okay to worship other gods too, then don't follow them. Don't listen to them, even if they do a miracle before you, even if they perform miracles, even if they make a prophecy and it comes true. And then they tell you, go and serve other gods. He said, you know what he said to do to them? He said to stone them. Take them out there and stone them. And then he went as far as to say, if there's a city anywhere in the land of Israel, if there's a city there and they don't follow what they're supposed to follow, what the law, then you need to go and check. And if in fact that city is not doing that, then wipe them off the face of the earth. All of them. Yeah. That's how important it is that false doctrine and false teaching does not fall into Israel or the church as well. Now, we don't stone people today, do we? No, that would be not a good thing, right? So we looked at what was it church say, because the New Testament talks about false teachers in almost every book there is. In almost every one, you'll find something about watch out for false teachers. And so what are we supposed to do if there's a false teacher? Do we stone them? We take them out and we stone them? Say no. You guys can say no. It's okay. No, we don't do that. But it tells we should. It tells us that we're to shun them and avoid them. That's what it tells us. To avoid them and to shun them. And treat them, in fact, Jesus had to treat them like a heathen or a pagan. Yeah. And so we need to be careful. And now as we're getting to Israel and they're going to go into the promised land, God's saying when you get into the promised land, you need to follow these laws if you want to stay there. And we'll start out here. Whoop, boy, that went quick. In 14 verses 2 through 3, it says, and this is the reason. For you are a holy people to the Lord. What's holy mean? Set apart. It means to be set apart. You are set apart for God for a specific purpose. And, we had utensils that were holy, and the holy place is a place that was set apart by God for use. So, for you are a holy people to the Lord, your God, and the Lord has chosen you to be a peculiar people. Well, what does that mean? A peculiar? They're weird? Well, they kind of were. But different from the world. That's right. The word means, it actually means, in the Hebrew, this word means like you're like a treasure for himself. This is the people I picked. And you see what it says? A peculiar people to himself above all nations that are on the earth. That doesn't mean they're first or the high nation. That means God could have chose any nation to be his chosen people. He could have chose anyone, any nation, right? But he chose Israel above all nations. You want to know why people hate Israel? It's this stuff. They can say, well, we're God's chosen people. He chose us before all you guys, right? People don't like that. Yeah, and so that's why Israel's so hated throughout the world. And did you know, we found out that the church is a chosen generation, it says. You are a chosen generation, because we're just here for a age, or our generation. We call it the church age. That's what we're here for. And during the church age, we are a chosen generation. And we're set apart too, he said, to be holy. Uh-huh. Right. Yeah. Right. Because they were special, and yeah, and they were chosen by God for that specific reason. And it's like, well, why didn't God choose me? Why didn't he choose the United States? Yeah, boy. I don't think he would today. But, the United States was based on God, the principles of God originally, of actually the 10 Commandments. We used to be able to hang those things up in public buildings. I don't know if you guys know that. They even had them in schools, right? And but boy, you can't do that today. And it's no wonder our country seems to be falling apart into what it is. But it's kind of sad. But anyway, they were a holy nation, and they were to be set apart from all other people, and that's why he gave them this. And so he says, you shall not eat any abominable thing. He gave this to the Jewish nation because they are a holy people set apart. He says you will not eat any abominable. Well, what's abominable mean? Terrible, disgusting, makes me want to puke, right? That's abominable. It's kind of like, I better not say that. I was going to say it's like my wife's cooking sometime. But she's such a good cook, I can't really say that. So I could get in trouble if I did. So I better not. It kind of slipped out already, didn't it? This is the word for abominable. It's abhorrent, disgusting, right? That's what that word means. Anything abominable. And so God says anything disgusting you can't. Well, what's disgusting? You can eat anything, right? Anything. Liver and onions is disgusting, but some people actually like that, believe it or not. But why did he give them these special laws and these special diets and these special rules? It's because they are his chosen people, and he wants them to do well. So the diet he gave was not to restrict them from just because to eat them, but because he wanted them to live a good long life, and he gave them a healthy diet. Let me put it that way. All right? Because our food, what we eat, is what we are. Our food goes into us, and then it goes out into all of our cells. Did you know that? Yeah, it does. And we have a great system, though, that when we eat bad stuff, it just shoots it on through and it comes out the other end, right? And it doesn't get it, but sometimes that bad stuff can leach into as things get bad. So he gave them a diet that's really wonderful. So, and which we'll look at here in a minute. I can't get it on that slide. There it is. So going back to Deuteronomy chapter 4, it said, you shall keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you this day, that it may go. This is the reason he's given them this diet, that it may go well with you. That well means that things will be beautiful. It can mean happy. It's just going to be a wonderful life. And with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days on earth. So this is a diet that actually helps them to live longer, if we just follow it, right? which the Lord your God gives you, how long? Forever. Yeah, that's a long time, isn't it? Now these are the commandments, Deuteronomy 6, and statutes and judgment which the Lord your God commanded to teach you. So Moses, God gave them the 10 Commandments. That was the law that he gave them. And Moses was to teach, well, what does that mean? These 10 Commandments. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all those commandments, to not take the name of the Lord God in vain, blah, and on and on. Well, how do you live those? How does that go out? Well, Moses was to teach him that. God was going to show him, this is what you need to do. And that's where all these other rules and laws and statutes came from. That you might do them in the land you go to possess, that you might fear the Lord your God, to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you and your son's son all the days of your life. It's supposed to be a forever thing. And so that your days may be, here it is again, prolonged. That means drawn out. That's what the word means in the Hebrew, that you're going to draw the days out. You're going to live longer. So hear, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you. We saw that again, that things are going to be really wonderful and really good if you would just live by these rules. Did they do that, by the way? Not very long, huh? Under certain kings they did, and they prospered, right? And then another king would come in, and they would fall apart. So as the Lord your God, your fathers promised you, and the land that flows with milk and honey. And he did this. He said in Leviticus, you shall make a distinction between clean animals and unclean. I thought all animals were dirty. I know where goats are in the clean part. And I see my goats. It's like, I don't know. But animals between unclean and between unclean, fowls and clean, and you shall not make your souls, and I thought that was interesting, you shall not make your soul abominable by an animal. How does an animal affect our soul? That word for soul is nephelis, your life, what you are, your being, right? And so it's really talking about there are certain animals, if you eat them, can mess you up. Your life force, let's call it your life force, your vitality, what you are, yeah, your liver, yeah, all that. By animal or by fowl or by any manner of living thing that creeps on the ground, which I have separated from you as unclean. I have separated them from you. Now remember, he's given this to the nation of Israel because they are his chosen people, and they're supposed to be different than everyone else on earth. And you shall be holy to me. That's what this was all about. For I, the Lord, am holy and have separated you from other people, that you should be mine. So he did this to separate them from other people. But like I said, they wouldn't do that. Because you look at all the animals out there and other things, you say, why not? How can that be bad? How can that be wrong? How can it be wrong to eat a pig? I like pig, by the way. It's one of my favorite things, bacon and sausage. Oh, gee whiz. Yeah. But in Isaiah 65, God said this to Israel. He said, I have spread out my hands all day to a rebellious people who walk in a way that is not good, after their own thoughts. You see, and this is where we get into problems. We walk after our own thoughts. That means our own plans, our own intentions, our own ideas of what's right and what's wrong. We decide, not God, right? We don't let God decide. We decide what's right and wrong. And so we walk after our own thoughts. People that provoke me to anger continually to my face, that sacrifice in gardens and burn incense upon the altars of brick. And so Israel, they said, why can't we worship God our way? Why do we have to do it the way that he said to do it? Why do we have to do that? Why can't we worship how we want to worship the way I want? And so they said, well, we can burn incense on the mountains, on altars that we erect, and we're going to burn them to Jehovah, to God. They're the Lord their God, Jehovah Elohim, the Lord their God. We'll burn them, but we don't have to do it the way he said. He said, no, you can only do that in certain places. You can only sacrifice in certain places. You can only pray, and do it right. You can't worship me on those mountains with those altars and make images of me. And they said, well, why not? And I want you to notice that the church and Israel are parallel, because that's happened in the church now. We do the same thing. We worship God the way, we want to, and not the way necessarily that he said. So why not just worship God the way we want to? See, Israel did the same. We look at Israel and we say, oh, well, how could they have messed up? How can they do that? They had God's laws. God led them and did all these things for them and guided them. And look what they did. And why can't we say the same thing about the church? Look how the church started. Look how it all came about. Look at all the miracles that God has done in our lives as well. And then we say, oh, well, I'm going to do it my way. And so it's no wonder that we have so many churches that are out there that teach false doctrine and false truths, because we all got our way to do it. But God didn't give us a whole lot to go by. Well, he did, actually. He gave us the whole New Testament, right? And we should go by that. But the main thing he said is those who worship me have to do it in spirit, with their heart, with their being, and in truth. Though that was the other thing, right? Because you can worship God in spirit, but you worship the wrong God or a different God. It's got to be in truth. And what is truth? Pilate asked that, right? What is truth? Well, God says his word is truth. So we got to do it by his word. That is truth. Jesus said, I am the truth. Is Jesus also, didn't he not say that he was the word? And the word is the truth. They go hand in hand. Yeah. And so we got to be careful, right? That we do it God's way and not our way. Anyway, he said, so who remain among the graves and lodge in the monuments, who eat swine's flesh, and the broth of abominable things is in their bowls. Possum stew. Maybe roast vulture. Doesn't that sound good? Vulture? Yeah. All that good stuff. Yeah, it tastes like chicken, right? Everything tastes like chicken. So, anyway, yeah, but there's a reason God gave them the diet that he gave them. It's a healthy diet. It's a good diet, and it's going to make them live longer. The stuff we eat, guess what? It's not going to do that for the most part, right? These are the animals which you can eat. Here we go. Ox, that's a cow. Sheep, goat, hart, that's deer. Gazelle, antelope, and the roebuck, the wild goat, the ibex, and the antelope, and the mountain sheep. All those things. You can eat those. And every animal that parts the hoof and has the hoof split in two, okay, and chews the cud among the animals you can eat. And that's what these animals that he's given them. These are classifications, not specific. Well, some of them are specific animals, but they're classifications of animals. They part the hoof and they chew the cud. All right? Nevertheless, you cannot eat of those that chew the cud or of those that have cloven hooves. These ones, right? The camel. Camel has what? No, it doesn't. It doesn't have a cloven hoof, right? But it chews the cud. It does have a. Well, then it doesn't chew the cud. And the hare, which is a rabbit, and the rock badger, for they chew the cud, but they don't divide the hoof. Okay? And so they are unclean to you. And the swine, because it divides the hoof, yet it doesn't chew the cud, it is unclean to you. You shall not eat of their flesh, nor touch their dead carcass. So it went even further for them than eating. You weren't even supposed to touch them if they're dead. Yeah. Kind of crazy, huh? Now pigs that taste so good and Kyle loves, they eat just about anything. I remember we used to throw them our leftover garbage, and they would eat it. And it's like, whew. And then we're going to eat, because whatever a animal eats, or a person, what they eat goes into their tissue. And if you eat it, guess what goes into you? That's why when you catch a fish and that is full of mercury, can cause you a lot of trouble, because that mercury is in their flesh and then it goes into you. And so we got to remember that that can happen. And so he wanted them to be special. And think of let's look at the things that are in the water. You can eat all that are in waters, all that have fins and scales. Fins and scales, right? You can eat, and whatever does not have fins and scales, you may not eat. It's unclean to you. Yeah, and so he's talking about like crabs and lobsters, and those. Why would they be so bad to eat? What do they eat? They're scavengers, right? They are bottom feeders. Octopus, yeah, and so they do the same thing. They eat dead carcasses, right? Yeah, well, yeah. So there you go. They'll and if it's not alive, they'll eat a dead one too. That's how they survive. That's how those kind of animals survive. Like lions and bears, they'll go and they'll eat and find a carcass that might have been dead for who knows how long, and it's rotten and it's rotted flesh, but they eat it because their stomach and stuff can have the bacteria to break that stuff down, but it goes into their flesh, and then we eat it, and guess where it goes? Yeah, it goes into us. So we need to be careful about what we eat. Luckily, God has given us great bodies that can defend this stuff, unless we do it too often and too long. And then we get ourselves into a lot of trouble. And then we have birds. Of all the clean birds you can eat, but these are those which you cannot eat. Has anyone ever eaten an eagle? No, me either. And the vulture and the osprey and the buzzard and the falcon and the kite after their kinds and every raven. You see what ravens eat? Ugh. Yeah, after its kind, and the ostrich. I don't necessarily get that one, but whatever. And the nighthawk and the seagull and the hawk after their kinds. The little fowl, the little owl, the great owl, the water hen, the pelican, and the carrion vulture, and the cormorant, and the stork. All those are birds that eat other birds, are other living creatures, right? After it, the hoopoe, which is like a bat, and the bat. But of all the clean fowls you may eat, you can eat chicken. So there you go. yeah, that's true. I got to be careful saying that, because chickens don't always eat the best either. But typically, if they're raised, now the way they raise them nowadays, right? They don't ever get to even go out of their cage. They just have all this stuff that they're feeding, and they're bad for you because of what they're feeding them too. They're feeding them all kinds of antibiotics and hormones and stuff like that. Well, guess where that goes? Remember, it goes into their flesh, and then it goes into us. And so it's real important that we watch how we eat, because your body's got to take care of whatever you put in it. And if you keep putting too much junk in it, it will rebel on you. I promise you. Anyone want to eat insects? Every winged insect is unclean to you. They shall not be eaten. That's like, if they have 4 wings, I think it's okay, but if they have just 2, like a fly, you don't want to eat a fly. You don't know where a fly's been, right? I ate a fly one time on a bologna sandwich. Yeah, it flew into my bologna sandwich and I ate it. And ever since that, I've not been able to eat bologna sandwiches. Yeah. I used to love that, and then that happened, and I it's a mental thing, right? I can't eat bologna sandwiches all of a sudden, but whatever. You guys are going to like this one, I think, anyway. It says you cannot eat anything that dies of itself, right? You don't know why an animal died, right? You don't know what disease it had. But what I like, it says you can give it to the stranger. I haven't figured that one out yet. You shall give it to the stranger that is in your gates, that he may eat it. Well, we don't care if the stranger dies. Or you can sell it to a foreigner, for you are a holy people to the Lord, and you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. That one, again, that's something that we just don't understand, but there's a reason for it that God knows. I don't know what it is. It just is abhorrent to him. And if it's abhorrent to God, then we probably shouldn't do it, right? But I thought that was kind of funny. This sell it to the foreigner, sell it to the stranger, and let them eat that thing that died of itself, that died from who knows what. But anyway, that's interesting. They weren't allowed to do that. And remember, all these rules are for Israel because they are God's chosen people, and he set them apart to be holy. These laws are for his chosen people, Israel. Okay, and we'll see that as we go along here. Well, our original diet. You guys all know what our original diet was? God said, behold, I have given you every plant bearing seed. So not just plants. It has to be a plant that bears seed. Like, does grass bear seed? Can you get grass seed anywhere? Yeah, so it has a seed, right? So you can eat grasses like wheat. Does wheat have seeds? Yeah, we should all see that. Barley? Yeah, all those. Plant bearing, which is upon the face of the earth. And every tree, okay, that sounds like fruit kind of stuff, which has a seed in it. So the fruit has to have a seed in it. Okay? To you it shall be for food. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into it and see what they are, but yeah. Are they unhealthy? Okay, yeah. Yeah, and they do have a seed in them? Yeah, that would stop you in and of itself. Yeah, I don't know, but as he gave for food, these trees that bear fruit, and if the fruit is in the seed is in the fruit, then according to Genesis 1:29, it's good to eat. So somehow it would be good. And that was our original diet. What's missing from that diet? Meat, yeah. And it said this was going to be your food, and that word for food is oklah in the Hebrew, and it means what you can devour. That's what it means. That's going to be food for you. But that was our original diet, and that's probably the best diet. I think there's something about a plant-based diet that really works for us. I don't know that it has to be 100% plant-based, but the focus should be plant-based. If you want to have a healthy diet, it should be plant-based. And you're going to do way better. And they've proven that over and over with study after study after study, that plant-based diets do better. That's why they say you should get this many servings of vegetables and this many servings of fruits, right? And they're way more than the servings of dairy and meat and that kind of stuff, right? It's way more because they can't get around that those foods are so good for us. And so they tell us to eat those. And that's what God originally gave us. Then the flood happened. Well, sin actually happened, and then the flood happened. But after the flood, he's talking to Noah, and he said, Noah, and the fear of you and the dread of you, meaning of mankind, will be on every beast of the earth, and on every fowl of the air, and on everything that moves on earth, and on the fishes of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing. Have you noticed that all animals seem to fear us? Even when I'm hunting and a bear sees me, you know what the bear does? And I know the bear could take me. He doesn't know I have a rifle. Or maybe he does. But anyway, they take off. They run. They get out of there. And every animal I've ever seen, that's what they do. They have there's some kind of fear or dread of mankind on beasts. Well, God did that. He put that fear on them for whatever reason. I guess because we're going to use them for food. And it says, and then he said, every moving thing. Right? Before it was plant-based, these plants I made, every moving thing that lives will be food for you. Even just like the green plants were, I have given you all things. But the flesh with its life, and this is gone down through the ages, that means you're not to eat the blood. You're not to take the blood out of the animal and eat it. Which is his blood you will not eat. He said you won't do that. And that's been a law forever. From God, not just for his chosen people, but for everybody. That's what he's saying. You're not supposed to do this. But he's given us every moving thing that lives. And I'm like, yay. I'm glad because I eat. I mean, every moving thing, though. You can eat anything, is what he's saying. That doesn't mean anything's good for you, though. Okay? Do you understand that? That doesn't mean everything is healthy. That means it can be used as food. It will give you energy to do something. But it can also give you disease and sickness if you eat it incorrectly. We have to prepare stuff, right? They say chicken, you got to really cook it, right? Is it chicken you got to cook? And pork, you got to really cook it, or else it can be bad for you. And so there's the way you prepare it is important. And but originally it was a plant-based diet, and in Ezekiel had to go around for almost 2 years, right? Take to yourself wheat and barley and beans and lentils and millet and spelt and put them in one vessel and make yourself bread of it according to the number of days that you should lie on your side. These prophets back in the day, they had to do some crazy things. Being a prophet back then, he had to lay on his side 390 days. That's over a year, right? And you shall eat this bread. And it sustained him very well. And your food which you shall eat by weight 20 shekels a day. From time to time you shall eat it. You shall drink also water by measure, the sixth part of a hin. From time to time you shall drink. When you're hungry, eat the bread. When you're thirsty, drink the water. Lay on your side 390 days. Okay, God, I'll do that. Boy, it was a demonstration for Israel of what God was going to do for them or to them. So, yeah, and then Daniel, remember Daniel? He didn't want to eat the stuff that all the other men were eating. And so he said, test your servants, I beg you, 10 days, and give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Well, that word for vegetables doesn't just mean any vegetable. It could be beans and all that kind of stuff. Those are all vegetables, believe it or not. And it could be any of that stuff. And then he said, then look at us, and on the countenance of the ones who are eating the king's food, and as you see fit, and deal with your servants. So he consented in this matter and tested them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, they were, they had energy. That's what that countenance is. They had vitality. They had energy more than the guys that were eating the king stuff, and appeared fatter. You can actually get fat off the beans. I don't know if you know, but beans are pretty fattening. And nuts and that kind of stuff, they have a lot of fat to them. It's good fat, but nevertheless, you don't have to lose weight being a vegetarian or a vegan, but most of us will, because if we change that from the diet that we're currently on, you're gonna lose weight. But Daniel, they got better. And anyway, do you remember? And then as we get to the church, I'll get there. It said, talking to Peter, right? Peter was a staunch Israelite. He followed the law to the T. At least pretty much he thought he did. He said, on the next day they went on their journey and drew near to the city. Peter went up to the housetop to pray about the 6th hour, and he became very hungry. It's lunchtime, man. And he would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance, and he saw heaven opened, and a certain vessel descending on him, as it had been a great sheet held at the 4 corners and let down to the earth, in which were all kinds of 4-footed beasts of the earth, wild beasts and creeping things, and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, rise, Peter, kill and eat anything you want, right? But Peter said, not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. What does common mean? Common means, the word means that everyone else is eating, that just anyone is eating. He said, I've never done that. And the voice spoke to him, and again the second time, what God has cleansed, call not common. This was done 3 times, and the vessel was received up to heaven. God told him to eat the unclean animals. He said, go ahead. I mean, this is for a purpose. He was trying to show that the Gentiles were clean because God made them clean. That's why we're clean, because God made us clean in Jesus Christ. See? And he was trying to show Peter that. In fact, false teachers in the church are the ones that are going to tell you that you have to abstain from certain foods in order to be holy to God. There'll be false teachers that tell you that. Timothy was talking about him. He said they forbidding to marry and commanding to abstain from foods, which God has created. Who created it? God created to be received with thanksgiving. Okay? For those who believe and know the truth. For every creature of God. How many creatures of God? Every creature of God is good. How about that? Even the fly? Yeesh. Mosquitoes? No. Anyway, nothing is to be refused if it is received with thanksgiving, because the thanksgiving sanctifies it and sets it apart. And so what happens is we eat something, and it just, typically it's just going to go through a big, what we call our gullet, right? Goes from our mouth, starts in our mouth and ends in our rear, and it just goes on through there. But your body does stuff with that. You got to remember that too. But God has things to filter bad stuff out. He's given you that to do. But if you overwhelm your body, I'm telling you, if you overwhelm it with bad stuff, it's not that you can't eat some bad stuff, but if you overwhelm it with bad stuff, it will rebel. And you'll get a disease, or you'll get an injury, or you'll get whatever, because you're overwhelming your body with bad stuff. And there's a lot of bad stuff out there. Yeah. And so we got to be careful, because what God's trying to say and what Jesus is trying to say, it's not what goes into you that defiles you. It's what comes out of you. Got that? Whatever I eat and it goes into me, that doesn't defile me. But what comes out of me, my mouth, and what I do, that defiles a person. And Jesus said that, right? In Mark it said, and when he called the people to him, he said to them, listen to me, every one of you. Okay, listen, every one of you. And he said, he said, and understand, there is nothing. What's nothing mean? Zero. From outside a man, that entering into him can defile him. That word defile means to ruin, to make morally sick. But the things which come out of him, those are what defile the man. And the people were like, what? They didn't understand that, because they've been taught so long that what you eat and stuff, what goes into you can defile you. But he says, no, there's nothing that outside of a man that goes into him. And that word outside in the Greek, it means external to him. There's nothing. And so as they're going like, well, I don't get this. The disciples were saying, I don't understand. I don't get this. He said to them, are you without understanding also? You know what that line means? That word? It means, are you really that stupid? That's what it means. Are you really that stupid? Do you not get it? That's perceived. Do you not get it? That whatever thing from outside enters into the man, it cannot defile him, because it enters not into his heart. It doesn't go into his heart. Where does it go? Tell me, and then where? Because it enters into his heart, not into his heart, but into the belly, and goes out the drain. I like the way he said that. Out the drain, purging all foods. That's what God created our digestive system to do. But we can overwhelm it. Don't ever forget that if you eat too much wrong. Do you know what the worst culprit for food is? Sugar. That's right. Sugar is literally a poison. It can literally kill you if you eat too much of it. And we eat way too much of it in this country. And so we have a lot of diseases that come from that. But he says, so he said, that which came out of the man, that defiles the man. That which came out of the man. And then he goes and he lists 13 things that come out of a man that defile him. You want me to tell you what those 13 are? Evil thoughts. That defiles a person. Evil thoughts. Evil means bad. Okay? And thoughts mean I'm giving it consideration. It's not just a quick thought like it's there and gone. It's like I'm giving this some thought. Right? What's that? Dwelling, yeah. So evil thoughts, adultery, fornication, murder, theft, covetousness, wickedness. That means a want to do bad. Okay, deceit, that's lying, trickery. Wantonness, that means I'll just live my life however I want, whatever. Okay, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, and the last one on the list is foolishness, which means I'm just going to be stupid. All right? That is what defiles a person. Not what goes in. It's what comes out. It's what it does to you. That's what makes you, and that word defile means to profane, to make just morally wrong. Yeah. And so God gave Israel a special diet to help them, not to hinder them, to help them to live happy, healthy, successful lives that are going to be prolonged. Okay? To the church, he said, eat whatever you want. Whatever you want. It's because it's not what goes in that defiles a man, it's what comes out that defiles the man. I want you to understand that everything I made is good. Everything I made can be used for food. But that doesn't mean you can't mess up by eating too much of a bad thing. Because we sure can. And the things that God said were bad to the Israelites, they're bad. They're bad for you. They're not good. That's why they couldn't eat them. They're not good for you. Doesn't mean your body you can't eat it and your body can't handle it. Try doing it over and over. How many people have shellfish allergies? Yeah, how many people have dairy allergies? Yeah, you can go on and on and on. Drugs too, yeah, bad. Right? Doesn't take much of that to overwhelm your body. Yeah. So anyway, we're going to stop there because we're out of time. Any questions or thoughts about anything? Yes, no? All right, let's pray. Father, we just thank you for your word today and just pray that you'd help us to follow you with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, that we would glorify you here on the earth as your church and just give you all honor and praise. We pray for Nathan as he brings your message to us this morning, that you would speak through him to us as well, and Lord, that you would be glorified